So then you think, who leads the leaders? And so what I tried to start teaching them was plan for chaos. It's going to come. You need to know what your touchstone is, your healthy touchstone. How do you regulate after a bad day? What is going to be your go-to before the chaos comes?
Dr. Mull, Mandolen Mull, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited for the opportunity to chat with you today about all things, a lot of things wellness. I think the listeners are going to find you touch on so many different aspects of wellness that are going to be exciting to chat through. But before we get started, I mentioned to you before we hopped on, my guests don't nearly talk about themselves enough in terms of what they've done, and they're amazing human beings. So I just wanted to introduce you just a little bit for you, so you don't have to brag about yourself. So you are the founder and principal consultant at Momentum Consulting, which works with leadership development, and you foster sustainable growth for individuals, teams, and organizations. And I think we have that in common. A PhD in organizational development and change, a postdoc in positive psychiatry, which I love, an MBA in international business. I think the list would have been shorter to just say the degrees you don't have. And then your consulting focuses on providing analysis and interventions that improve enduring performance outcomes. Does that seal the deal? Does that kind of explain kind of your background a little bit?
I think it does. Absolutely. Yeah. It's I aspire to be a polymath, right? So I just wanted to learn as much as I could about a variety of things, but not necessarily master any of it. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
I love that. Jesse Itzler talks about if you do something 11 minutes a day, every single day for a year, you will be better than 94% of the population in that one thing. And I thought,
yeah,
that's so cool. Why become an expert in anything when you could just spend 11 minutes a day for a while doing it, right?
And that's kind of what I thought. I thought, man, if I can be good enough in a couple of different realms that seem, adjacent to each other, then I can help people move the needle. If I'm, only niched into one area that doesn't touch these other realms, I'm going to, kind of be a one-trick pony, which is really my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that someone one day is going to say, oh, I've learned all I could possibly learn for her. So that's why I have committed to this lifelong learning.
I love that. Yes. So my degree was in wildlife biology, right? And I don't use that at all. My first one anyways. I don't use that at all in what I do anymore, but it does bring new perspectives into my life and ways in which other people might not look at things. Like for instance, people might say, "Oh, well that person doesn't want to take care of themselves, they're lazy." And I'm like, "Well, ecologically speaking, you don't ever see a lion go out for a jog after a big meal, right? Like we as mammals aren't designed to expend calories unnecessarily. And so it's against our nature to do these things. So let's give ourselves a little bit of a break." So have you found yourself in the same place where these different backgrounds and experiences and educational resources have allowed you to see the world in a different light that allows you to help your clients a little bit more?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and one that, so my field, where I got my PhD in, we have an Academy of Human Resource Development. So that is a commitment to developing people through leadership, through training, through change, or a combination of all three. And we talk about things like employee engagement and workplace well-being and job satisfaction and career pathways and all these kinds of things. But here's the thing, Coach. We were getting called in as consultants and people were saying, workplace well-being. Yeah, we buy into it. We need it. What do we do? And we didn't have an answer for that, right? So then people were talking about burnout and imposter syndrome and all of these types of things and culture, the amorphous word of culture. And they were like, so what do we do to help people? And what was happening was we were getting people coming back going, yeah, you talked to us about taking a mental health day, about going for a walk, about doing yoga, but none of that feels really tangible. And so there wasn't any of these like tangible tools that we could really provide to people that would say, hey, you just got that email from your boss for a meeting for next week that has no subject line, no agenda, and now you feel really sick in your stomach and you're freaking out. How do you nurture yourself that way, right? What is going to be your coping mechanism for that? Or you're walking into maybe a review or a really high pressure meeting and you're tense. What are you doing to try to calm yourself down? Are you doing some diaphragmatic breathing? Are you doing some bilateral tapping on the outside of your knees underneath the table where nobody can see you, but you're calming yourself down? Those were really tangible things we could start talking to people about. And so that's why I went in and got the degree in positive psychiatry, because I was hearing it from my clients and I had gotten credentialed an education to go in and try to talk about workplace well-being, but it was really just a buzzword. Like it really didn't, you know what I mean? Like we were doing all of these studies for it and we were telling people that they should create like meaningful work for folks and healthier workplaces and happy workplace and all that kind of mess, which is great. But nobody knew what anybody was talking about. There wasn't any actual teeth to what we were trying to say. And so now it's and this fits into a very amorphous realm, right? Because people say, well, is that psychology that should be coming in? Well, IO Psych doesn't really do that. Is it, like mental health counselors, things like that? Well, it's not quite the same thing, is it? Is it career coaching? Well, that also is not quite the same. So nobody really knew where this fit into the bucket. And the reality is it doesn't belong in any bucket. It belongs in all of ours. But we all have to kind of step up and know this stuff, right? And so that's why it makes it a little bit difficult. We make the joke about nobody knows what a consultant does because like we don't know how to define ourselves, right? And that's so funny. But it's so true. But I think it's because we really are a mixed bag, and rightly so. Because if you're truly trying to meet the needs of the people around you, you've got to go to the table saying, I don't get to dictate what's valuable to you. Here's who I am. Here's my background. Here's what I can offer. What do you think can help you? What are your pain points? And then how can I help you find anchoring points to navigate forward? Versus me coming in with some kind of talking point and just talking at people versus having that kind of dialogue with them, So I think that's what's really helped me in my career, have these customized training programs, because it's really been this thing of, I don't know what your pain points are until you and I start talking. Then I can figure out from this vast array of my background and my experiences that might be able to support you. And maybe it's something entirely new that we have to create together.
I think that's phenomenal. I think that's great because I actually just did a blog post about the difference between a coach, a consultant, an advisor, and a mentor. Because a lot of people were like, well, what's a coach? What's a consultant? When do I need this? When do I need that? And so to say, you mentioned nobody knows what a consultant actually does. It can be true because I think I have found when I'm working with my clients, I blend through a lot of those different things. Sometimes I'm a coach, diehard, full and through, and that's typically how I, hang my shingle. But I also venture into consulting sometimes when a client just needs me to really sit down with them and get some work done, right? Like I just need some help. I need a little bit of offloading here. And then I move into a mentor when I'm helping them figure out what do you want to be when you grow up kind of philosophy. And so I think it's really important to know what you're really, really strong at and what you're offering. I think especially when you have a business around it, it's being able to sell the thing that you do really, really well so people can understand what value you bring to them. It's being open and willing like yourself to venture into new territories and learn new things, because that's how you're going to be able to continue to grow and evolve into something that can serve your clients. And then I think it's another thing too to realize, oh, I'm not the person for this, and have those resources to help them find who that is. I think to your point, we're getting to this place, and I'd love to hear more on this subject from you, but we're getting to this place where, I was in the educational setting for a little while, and I would have students come in and tell me, hey, coach, because I was in the fitness space. They'd tell me, hey, coach, I don't think I'm going to be able to work out today. And, I always would put up my defenses a little bit like, oh, they just don't want to do it. They're lazy, blah, blah, blah. Or, whatever. But over the years, I've learned to listen. And they're like, I watched my mother relapse last night. And so I just, I'm not in a mental space. And I'm like, yeah, you don't have to work out today. And so it can be challenging, but that blurred line of, I mean, we're really talking about that individual needs to talk to a therapist, right? They need help getting through some stuff, not in a negative way, but in a very positive way. They're struggling and they need to work through that. But it's being asked of teachers in the educational space now to do that. And I think also in the occupational space, I think more and more bosses, leaders, managers are being asked to help maintain the emotional response or regulation of the people that they work for. And I'm a leader who believes strongly in supporting the people and the mission and helping them through things. And I'm also a leader who understands, owning a business myself, we have to work together towards a common goal. So there are expectations or asks that you're going to ask of your employees. So I'd love to hear a little bit more on your take of that issue that can maybe sometimes arise in the occupational setting of wearing too many hats as a leader.
Yeah, so, I have this mindset that our employees are not going to church, they're not going to therapy, they're not getting involved in their community, but they're going to work. And what is really heartbreaking is, we're seeing people, living unedited lives in real time. And there's a lot of things that are not being done to create these environments of community and connection. So to give you an example, I work with union iron workers, which is like one of my favorite groups to work with. And I taught a leader development course to these guys. And it was all men in my first class that I taught. And I was scared to death, coach, because here I was going to lean all in into imposter syndrome and insecurity, and I was going to share my story and be extremely vulnerable with these guys. And I didn't know how it was going to go, right? Like I said, because I didn't know what their pain points were. I was going to walk in and just see. But one thing I did know is that we have higher rates of suicide in the construction fields than we do in the military fields and the first responders. And we have generational trauma, maladaptive coping skills in construction fields. And so here I have these leaders in the construction field. I get to work with them, and I don't know exactly how this is going to turn out, but I start leaning into all of these types of things. And within a few hours, I had these men crying. And, one gentleman talked about how he had an apprentice who had been killed in a car wreck, and that he had to go clean out his locker and take it back to the family. And he just looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "They don't train us for that, Doc." And they don't. We do not train leaders for how they are supposed to, especially in these types of fields, right? For how they are supposed to go and get that kind of help. And we talk about, like, go call the EAP. These guys are not going to call the EAP. Let's be real pragmatic here. You know what I mean? Like, so then you think, who leads the leaders? And so what I tried to start teaching them was plan for chaos. It's going to come. You need to know what your touchstone is, your healthy touchstone. How do you regulate after a bad day? What is going to be your go-to before the chaos comes? And so we really leaned into that and worked on that. And we talked about how that was going to be unique for each person. And understanding that when everyone is looking at them, right? Because in that individual's situation, you got to think the whole rest of the team was looking at him. They had just lost a teammate. So here, leader, lead us. And it's like, oh, we don't even get bereavement leave for this, right? And in the corporate sector, you get 3 days for an immediate family member. 1 day if it's, kind of an extended family. You think about that, coach. These people are showing up to work. They're showing up to work going through radiation. They're going all the life is happening in real time. I had a miscarriage years ago. I went right back to work. There is no bereavement for those kinds of things. So you think about, these are the people we're working alongside every single day. And it's not necessarily our responsibility to help them with any kind of like struggles in that regard. If they do need professional help, and we can point them in the right direction, but we can see them. Like, that's the most important thing I think we can do. We can stop this nonsense of leave your emotions at the door, never let them see you sweat, have a stiff upper lip, get back at it, that whole grind mentality that is such crap and just destroying people. And we've got to be authentic of saying, I'm messy, you're messy, let's navigate messy things together. And I may not be able, as your leader, to carry that mess for you. I might have to carry you to someone who can help you much, and I've given that kind of advice to folks like, hey, here's perhaps the type of counselor you should be looking for, and they could help you with this type of stuff. Or I can give them more direction. Here's how to go look for that. Here's, I've helped and assisted in those regards. And I think that's what we've got to do better at, is looking and seeing people in those instances, but we get so awkward where we don't want to talk about it. I had one of those ironworkers talking about battling cancer himself, going into work, and nobody would make eye contact because they were afraid that they were going to lose him. And how isolating that felt for him, right? Because nobody knew what to say to him. And it's like, then just say that, right? I'm like, just be awkward, please. Like, can we embrace more awkward people? And so that's where I think we've got to really lean into some more of that. And understanding that we as leaders may not carry all of that for everyone, but we can at least recognize that life is happening to people, and where can we see them and try to support them in a very authentic and genuine way.
That's powerful. And I think I would love leaders to make sure that they heard that point that you said, because I think you articulated it so well, which is, we don't have to carry the mess for you, but we can carry you to someone who can help you through it. And that's a big one, because leaders are, I don't believe that leaders should feel like they have to help. You're not therapists, and that's okay. But to your point, we have to recognize the human that's in there, not just the employee, not just the teammate or whatever, but just the human that's in there. And yeah, you can expect things of them, and you can ask them to do their job, and also recognize when things are going hard. And sometimes you're going to have to, in my opinion, you'll have to, trade off a little bit, give them a little leeway while they're going through something, recognizing that maybe they're going to bring it back threefold when they realize how much you care about them. That's the trade-off. And it's not ROI. It's not 1 for 1. It's not, you get 2 paid sick days. And I know exactly how, right? That can't happen. And it's hard. I admit it's hard when you get into a larger corporation where you have to be fair and have systems, because this person got a month off and this person didn't. And I get that. But I think the first step, to your point, is just being able to recognize in them, you're going through something hard and I feel for you. And I'm here to help you along the way in whatever way that I can. Even being clear, I can't help you in this because I'm not a therapist, but here's what I can help you with. And just trying to be authentic in that regard, I think, is really important.
Yeah, because I think we have leaders a lot of times that are not only therapists by proxy, therapists, financial advisors, marriage counselors, like we become these like really, right? I mean, I can't tell you, clergy, all of these types of things that we become as leaders, and nobody really trains us for those things. And so sadly, we have these really great leaders who are empathetic because we were told to be empathetic leaders, weren't we? Like, aren't great leaders those who are empathetic? I mean, this is the thing, coach. So we're all following the rule book we've been told to do, yet we as leaders are going home every day completely spent, worn out, like stressed out, and our whole like personal lives are a dumpster fire because we don't even know how to deal with it, right? So it's the idea of being able to understand that these things that come into our offices or come onto our desk, and being able to say, okay, this person needs financial advising. You know what? I keep seeing trends for that. How about we bring someone in for some financial literacy? How about we sign up our employees for LinkedIn Learning, where they can get certificates and these types of things, and they can get, asynchronous learning credentials that can help them in their own lives. Things like that, where we start to find tangible tools that are so much better than one leader trying to solve all the world's problems and not doing such a great job at it because we're not credentialed. But the thing is, as leaders, we tend to have a little bit of a superhero complex. So we do kind of get in our own way on that, and so again, it's like, hey, that humility part that we also say we need, that's where that comes in. And so again, it's knowing I'm not the best fit for this person. I do see them. I do appreciate that this is happening. I want to be supportive. Let me figure out the tools. Let me utilize resources that can assist them so that I am not carrying this home with me. And that's the thing. I think we've got a lot of leaders that look like Atlas out there holding up the world.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think some of it stems too from that feeling of being servant-hearted. So all the clients that I work with are servant-hearted individuals, servant-hearted, growth-minded, high achievers. That's my go-to clientele. Those are my people. And so with that servant-heartedness, I tell people all the time, no matter how flat you make a pancake, there's always two sides. So when you think of the one side of the servant-heartedness is like, I'm willing to give, I'm willing to support, I care about you, I'm here for you. Well, the other is exactly that image of Atlas holding the globe. All of your problems are my problems. All of your burdens are my burdens. And that just cannot be the place or the way. And so I think, to your point, there's this piece of being there and recognizing people and being able to help them and being there for them. And as a leader, recognizing that it is not your burden. It is your burden to help them get to where they are, and that's what you want to do, and that's great. But having those tools and resources, I think, is really important.